Storytelling is the most effective form of human communication on the planet, period. It works in business settings, it works in social settings, and it's the reason why the Hollywood industry generates billions of dollars every single year. It's probably the reason why you and I both binge watch certain things on Netflix. It's because the human mind cannot resist a really good story. My name is Paul Macetta, and I am a researcher in the field of human communication. So if you like learning about things like storytelling, NLP, hypnotic language, nonverbal language, mind reading, and storytelling, then go ahead and consider subscribing to the channel. Now, one of the things that I help business owners do is use storytelling to grow their brand and grow their business by wrapping up their marketing messages in powerful, riveting stories that captivate and intrigue their audiences so they can transform prospects into customers. Now, one of the biggest challenges that I hear from people is that either A, they don't think that they have any stories to tell, or B, they're using the wrong thing for a story. So in today's video, what I want to go over with you are some simple tips and strategies to come up with powerful brand stories. And this comes from my book, The Storytelling Blueprint. I will put a link in the description if you're interested in going to check it out. But for the purposes of today's video, let's jump right into this. So again, most people often face one of two challenges. They either A, think they don't have anything to use for a story, or they're using the wrong thing for a story. So the first thing that I tell people is when choosing a story, don't always start with the most dramatic or interesting one. Instead, select a story that illustrates the point you want to make. You might have a more dramatic story that doesn't fit the end goal, while another story might seem plain but aligns perfectly with the key theme. Always choose the story that aligns with the key theme because number one, I can always show you ways to polish it, I can always show you ways to expand it, and I can always show you ways to make it more dramatic. What we can't do is make an irrelevant story relevant to your objective. So, circling back to the objective, I talk about this in other videos, but essentially every business story should convey an idea. And you should be crystal clear on what that idea is, and that idea should be tied to the theme of the story. So when selecting a story, you first start with the idea. You first start with the theme. When you're crystal clear on the idea, that's when you say to yourself, okay, do I have any stories that actually align with and convey this idea? That's where you start. You don't start from, well, I had this near-death experience 2 years ago. How can I weave that into a story about my business? No. What you do is you start with the idea. And then once you're clear on the idea, then you ask, do I have any stories that convey this idea? Well, you know what? I had this near-death experience 2 years ago. Does that story convey this idea? No, it doesn't. Then it shouldn't even be talked about. So again, what we can't do is make an irrelevant story relevant to your objective. So ensure the story you choose aligns with the desired outcome and the theme you want your audience to grasp. The story should make the prospect walk away with a specific idea that supports your business goal. So people always ask me what's the idea? I don't know what the idea should be. So the way I want you to think about it is this. The idea is something that if you conveyed it to your audience or your ideal prospects, it would make them open and receptive to your products and your services. So if you have a product or a service that helps people lose weight, or you have a product or a service that helps people earn more money, or play the guitar better, or get it better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or whatever it may be, or become a better day trader, What is the idea that you need to convey about the way you do things specifically, right? Because you probably have a unique way of helping people that's different from what everybody else does. There's an idea that if you conveyed it and your audience understood it, it would make them open and receptive to your approach. That's the idea that you want to convey. So you want to ask yourself, what's the main message or takeaway that you want the prospect to have after hearing your story? Which idea do you want to convey through the theme? Then you select a story that fits. Always prioritize stories that match the key theme and the desired outcome. Avoid mismatched stories. Don't use a dramatic story just because it's entertaining if it doesn't support the message you want to convey. And then next is content explanation. So you might have a dramatic story that doesn't exactly fit the goal and a plain story that does. Again, always pick the one that matches the key theme. Dramatic stories can be made more dramatic, but you can't force a story that doesn't fit the end goal. I know, I've repeated myself a bunch there, but it's really important. So, Hollywood stories versus business stories. Reiterated again. I say that because in the book, I reiterate this story, this fact, a bunch of times. Hollywood stories are designed primarily to entertain the audience. They are meant to captivate and engage purely for entertainment, not necessarily to lead to a sale. Business stories are designed to captivate, intrigue, and ultimately lead to a sale. Focus on making the audience understand and support your brand, your business, and or the specific idea you're trying to convey. Your audience understands context. They know that when they're watching Netflix for entertainment versus when they're engaging in a business story. Don't disappoint them by telling them an irrelevant story in a business context. That's the worst thing you could do, is tell them an entertaining story, but it's in a business context, because they're going to feel like you wasted their time. When people make the decision to give you their attention, whether they're making the decision to sit down and binge watch something, or they're sitting down to watch your educational videos on YouTube, whatever it might be, like, they understand the context and they understand the difference between both of those different environments. And so you don't want to let them down by making them think they're going to get one thing and then you're going to ultimately give them something else. So let's talk about brainstorming and selecting stories. So you want to gather ideas from various sources to build a diverse library of potential stories. Top 3 are origin stories of your brand or your product. So how did it come about? Next is success stories of ideal customers or clients. And then next are indirect success stories using your methodology. These 3 types account for about 80% of good business stories. You also want to use metaphors within the story to illustrate key points, and you want to use analogies when you don't have a real story to tell. So metaphors and analogies are like the cousins of stories. So when real stories don't fit, like if you've tried every option, you've exhausted every option, and you don't have an origin story, which is kind of strange, but okay, you don't have an origin story, you don't have any success stories of ideal customers or clients, you don't have any indirect success stories, maybe you shouldn't be in business, but let's put that aside. In cases like that, where a real story doesn't fit, you can use an imaginative fictional narrative to drive your message home. So for example, there's a famous story that the Wall Street Journal used about 2 friends with 2 different levels of success. It was these 2 guys, they were the same age, they went to the same high school, they did everything the same, and I don't know, 20 or 30 years later, they reunite for a high school reunion, and one guy's ultra successful and the other guy isn't nearly as successful. And the difference between the two is that one guy read the Wall Street Journal every day and the other guy didn't. So again, it's a story, right? It's not real. It's a fake story, but it illustrates the importance of the Wall Street Journal, right? So that's an example of using a fictional story. Real stories are generally better for business storytelling. But sometimes, especially when starting out, you might need to use fictional stories because maybe you don't have that many success stories just yet. So as you engage more people and change more lives, then the real stories will start to surface. So, simple 4-part story selection process. Consider origin, success, or indirect stories. If none fit, use a metaphor or an analogy to create a fictional story. You should employ metaphors and analogies throughout the story, regardless of which type of story you pick, and narrow it down to a fictional or a non fictional story that best fits your narrative. Last but not least, remember the key is to choose a story that aligns with your business goals and conveys the idea you want your audience to grasp, whether it's dramatic or not. Once again, guys, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead, leave me a comment, give me a like, consider subscribing. If you do, hit that bell notification. And again, I'll put a link in the description if you're interested in learning more about business storytelling, where I go super deep on the magnetic narrative. Then check out the storytelling blueprint and the bonus package that comes with it. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you on the next one.